Hello everyone. Today we are going to create a route-based load balancing using Nginx. Now we understand that if let's say if we have a website and let's talk about a typical microservice website where we have a front end, we have a back end, and since we're talking about the microservices website, so this backend will have multiple services. For example, let's say this backend has a service called as a profile service, right? Or maybe an authentication service, or maybe some XYZ service running across. So all of these services are standalone, and all of them together, working together, basically forms a complete package. So if we actually look into the entire scenario, we see like there are basically you need to run four different services in order to make it a complete website running across, and we're not forgetting about the database as well. So including five different services that we need to run across. Now, the idea, if we look into it, we realize that if we go with the traditional routing, okay, it becomes expensive. The reason is if we actually have to go through the load balancers and everything which is being deployed through, let's take an example from the AWS. The usual flow would be that we might be running across all of these three into three different instances, and then provide a load balancer. So we have a load balancer for the backend, and then three different services running across. And then when basically like the front end is basically making a query to this DNS of the load balancer, and then the all the facilitate all the responses have been facilitated. So this is like how usually a typical the entire scenario would work. Now, if you actually go through the way like the AWS has been configured, if you use the load balance of the AWS, it will be a bit expensive. So what we tend to do is, especially when it comes to a development server, we would like to minimize our cost, okay, because first of all, it is a development server, right? Just for us to see like what are the changes that we are making, if it's perfectly fine or not, if there are small bugs that we can go across and fix it, how is it going to look like in a production environment, things like that. So what we're going to do at this point is that instead of using some expensive resources from the AWS, we are basically going to use something. We are going to build something out of the existing scenario. So let's say like all of these services are running in different port numbers. So all of these entire backend is made of Node.js application and running on different port numbers. So let's say the first service profile service is running on 3001. This is running on 3002. This is running on 3003. Things like that. And let's say front end is running on 3004. That's totally fine with us. Now, if I actually look into the services, and for now, like, we're just considering the database out of the scenario for this one. Okay, let's talk about the backend first because it is the one which looks a bit more complicated, per se, right? So what we can do at this point is we can simply go across and point out by saying that, hey, we are going to run all of the three services on not three different instances, but all of the three services into one particular instance. So we'll take one particular instance, bit bigger inside of the instance, and what we are going to do is we're going to say like, hey, we're going to open we're going to run all of these services in three different instance, three different port numbers in one particular instance. So let's say we are going to opt for a bit higher, so T3 is medium, we can say, or 3 T3 small can also do the job based upon the requirement on how much resources your these services are consuming. If it's a extensive resources, probably which is going to take a lot of CPU usage in that case, my suggestion would be that you would like to revisit this strategy. Okay, maybe you would like to have an independent server for all of this. So it needs to be very, you need to be very careful about how much resources you are utilizing. For this case scenario, I'm considering that all of these services are small, not too much of a load it will be, so I can run all of the three services into one particular instance itself. That saves us the money, saves us the time and effort as well. So I have like three of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the power of Nginx. So we know that Nginx is basically used for the reverse proxy. It can do port forwarding and stuffs like that. So we have seen in the past that how can we actually convert like port number 80 to translate it to one particular port number, right? Which means that any traffic, let's say I'm opening a website xyz.com on port number 80, okay, it hits the server at port number 80, obviously. Then Nginx will route this particular traffic to port number 3001, where the actual service is basically running across. This is something we can easily do it from here. But at this point, if you look into it, we have three different ports which is running. So our scenario would be a bit more, changed in this scenario. So what we want to do is like, we would like to have something like that. Hey, if I visit, let's say I'm just going to consider this as an api.xyz.com. So if I visit api.xyz.com slash profile, right, at port number 80, okay, it's given port number 80. So it should, so Nginx should be powerful enough in transferring all of this information to the service running at port number 3001 internally. Similarly, if I do something like api.xyz.com slash so we have like an authentication service, auth should go to 3002. Similarly, if we have api.xyz.com slash hitting at let's say xyz, okay, one case. If we have something like that, then it should hit it on port number 3003. So this is something that we are expecting out of it, right? Uh, okay, so if we can actually make this a route-based, load balancing kind of thing, okay, which you can do it from the load balancer, that would be awesome. Okay, so now that we already have all of these, things with us, we can actually move forward to, you know, to creating this entire ecosystem. There might be changes that we might have to change a bit on the profile slot, might have to change a bit on the authentication, X, Y, Z, and things like that. Right. To make it a bit more easier, we can use the containers as well. If you want to use containers, we can also go ahead and use the containers on that matter as well. Totally works fine with the containers. Anyway, so we can also go across, so we can go across and we can modify this entire scenario to use it more effectively. Okay, so for example, if we want to host our frontend at xyz.com, we can host the frontend at xyz.com at port number 80, and let's say port, it's running on some 3004 or XYZ port number. So it can also transfer that traffic. So idea is that we can also configure multiple domains or multiple subdomains in this particular case, two different port numbers, and Nginx will be, powerful enough in handling all of the responses, requests, and transferring them on. So that is exactly what the entire scenario looks like. So if I actually have to create a complete checklist of the things that we have, so let's completely, do a revisit of the checklist that we have. So first of all, we do have a backend service which is a microservices, so which means multiple services will be running across. We'll have a front end service, right? uh, Definitely. uh, we do, so remember, it's not a micro front end, so it's just like a simple front end running across. And then we'll also need to have we need to create an instances on AWS, right? Okay, so we'll be creating an instance on AWS EC2, and finally we'll have a Cloudflare. So my domain has already been configured with a Cloudflare, where I can just go across and forward those particular traffic to a Cloudflare, right? Given that I already have these, code base with me. Okay, so let's actually go ahead and try to, deploy this architecture by ourselves, right? Okay, so perfectly fine. So first of all, I'll simply go ahead and, start by looking into the application. So I already have a application called as the, sample MERN with microservices application. So this is like an application which is already there. So if we actually look into the application has two things. One is a hello service. The other one is the profile service. We do have like a hello and the profile service with us. And we have a front end. So this particular application has two service on the background, and one front end. So let's basically go ahead and clone this repository and see what we can do with this repository itself. So I'm using an as such. Okay. Okay. So I'm basically going to open my. So first of all, I'll just go ahead and clone these microservices. So my microservices there. Okay, I can open that on my Visual Code Studio. So if I actually look into the microservices, so it's a hello service. It's nothing. It's just saying hello, right? But remember, since we want to have microservices running across, so we would probably something like that. We'd like to have something where this hello service would be running in let's say api.xyz.com. Okay, it should be running on api.xyz.com. My bad. Slash hello, right? So this is like a complete route slash hello. And then if you want, you can have any other route like hello slash health and stuff like that. So all of these traffic should pass through the hello. So that's the first modification that we actually need to make in our application, that hey, it should be able to handle enough for the hello. Now remember, this is not written in an MVC structure, otherwise it would have been a bit easier to make those changes. But anyway, it's still fine. We can still work around with that. Now it requires a port, so I need to create a .env file for that matter. Okay, so I use a port equal to, let's say, 3001 for that matter. Okay, perfect. So we have things with us within the port number. Then similarly, if I actually go to the profile of this, it looks like it is using some sort of like the okay, it needs it has some database connection and stuff like that. So I'm just going to create a .env file, right? And I'll have like a port here as well, 3002, and I think it's a mongo underscore url which is there. So I need to put some mongo url at this point, right? So I need to put the mongo url at this point. I think that would be fine enough. Okay. uh, but at the same time I also need to make those changes that hey, this should come from the slash profile. So similarly, like what we did with the hello, we also need to do it with the profile as well. Okay, so profile slash profile slash. So we are making things around it. We're not making a lot of changes at this point to the website. Okay, unless we want to connect our front end with that matter. So I'm not sure if the front end is being actually being connected or not. Okay, no idea, to be honest. Okay, it's basically making a query to localhost 3001. Totally fine. We might have to change it, or we'll see like how things basically work internally. Anyway, for now let's focus on to the part which we are concerned, which is like a backend. Now in the backend, if I understand correctly, we need to also specify the MongoDB. So I already have a MongoDB Atlas website with me. So for that matter, I can simply go ahead, log into my cluster. Um, okay, log into my cluster. It's a MongoDB cluster altogether. Okay, so I can just go ahead and create a sample Nginx load balancer, right? Something later. Just matter. Okay, so I have my services running across. So if I want to copy this string, right? So if I want to, I'll just uh, sample nginx. Okay, it doesn't matter though. Okay, so I have my services running across. Okay, I pasted basically my credentials and everything into the .env file. Okay, so this looks like perfectly fine for me. So we'll go ahead and log into uh, our AWS and then go ahead and try to deploy this application. Perfectly fine. So on the other hand, if you want, we guys can actually go across and make couple of changes, make couple of changes as well uh, onto the container side. If you want to use a container, we can basically create it, containers, write Docker file, create the containers, and work around with those containers as well. That is something which works perfectly fine with us. Okay, so let's actually go ahead and log into our AWS account, and then we'll basically, kind of, start understanding on that part. So let's actually go ahead and log into our AWS website. Okay, right now we are into the AWS and we need to create an instance in order so that we can actually execute all of these, So let's first go ahead and configure the instance for Matter. So I'm using my Ohio region for that sample Nginx load balancer, right? And then I'm going to use Ubuntu. Okay, so T2 micro because I know I'll use a T3 family. T3 family has a bit of power, less expensive as well. So you can use T3 is small and that's totally fine. That is great actually. Okay, then we also have this key pair login. So I'll just use a new key pair. Okay, sample and Nginx. Okay, perfectly fine. Now the port 80 to be working across. I'll need a bit more, space, so storage. So I'll make it like a 30, okay, 20 GB is, I think 20 GB is fine with me. So I'll make it like 20 GB or something. Okay. And then I'm going to launch my instances. So my instance is running across, and if you see this instance is getting initialized, it will take few seconds of time before it can get initialized. So at this point, if I actually look into the terminal, if I actually go across, okay, so if you see get status, okay, branch, and I'll just create a branch okay, okay, so right now I'm in the branch and the next load balancer. So the idea is I'm just going to create a different branch for that matter, and I'll kind of push all of my content into those particular branch so that it does not interfere with the other, branches altogether. So first we'll go across and start by deploying the, backend services first. That's what we decided. Okay, so I hope okay, it's going to take some time. So now I'll just use a console. So AWS provides this beautiful console for us to connect to the instances and then use it. So I like this web console of the AWS. Okay, might still takes few minutes of time. Okay, in the meantime, we can simply go ahead and push this code onto our, application so that we know what kind of configurations that we are basically looking after, right? Because we make those small changes and we would like to replicate those changes into the GitHub so that we can handle those things across. uh so git add, remember my .env file won't be pushed, okay, because it's because it consists of some credentials, right? Okay, So it's consists of some credentials. So I would not like my credentials to be pushed on to my Git because it's a public one. Anyone can see it, and also it's not, recommended for the security point of view. So that's why it's a env file. You have to manually go and configure the env file. Unless you have some CI/CD pipeline, you can definitely go ahead and uh, you know set those things across. That I have pushed all of my services for this, right? So I can definitely go across and you know I can definitely go across and start by deploying of the instances. So I think this is up to date. Sudo app. First of all, we need to update. Okay, we'll simply go ahead and update the system. Perfect. So now I'll just go across and install Nginx. Perfect. So if everything has been perfectly fine, I can, look into the Nginx as if the Nginx is, certainly running or not. So if you want, you can check, sudo service Nginx status. Okay. So you can see like, the Nginx is active, running, which is totally perfectly fine. That's exactly what we were expecting. So if you actually open this public IP address somewhere here, okay, you'll realize the Nginx is working at that matter, right? Perfect. Okay, so that's exactly what we want at this point of time. So we can actually go across. We can see like, okay, we already have, I think we'll have, if I just reload this page, you'll find out that I already have Nginx load balancer with me where I already made those changes that we were, talking about, right? And if you look into it, you'll realize that there is no .env file for that matter. Okay, perfectly fine. So I'll just go across, clone this repository. Okay, so I'll have, my bad. So the name of the branch, we need to, go into this specific branch because by default will be in the master branch. So nginx load balancer, right? Get status, and we are right now into the branch we are hoping for. So if you actually look into the backend, so these are the file that we were talking about, right? This is the file that we are talking about the hello and stuff. But we also know that we need to create a .env file for that matter, right? Okay. So basically go across and use the .env file from here, you know, put it down here itself. Okay. Similarly, I'm going to do the same thing for the uh, you know profile service. Okay, so I'm going to create .env file. Okay, so for the profile service as well. Okay, so I have the both my profile services and my backend services running across. Now there are two ways to proceed. Either I can go across and create a Docker file for it to configure everything, or I can simply just run it as like a normal process, like two individual services running across. Okay. We'll work with a Docker some other day. Okay, for now we'll just make it very simple, which is like okay, we need to just make it run across. Okay, for that we need to install Node.js. If you actually want to work with the services, we need to install the Node.js. Remember, we haven't worked with installing of the Node.js as of now. So we need to go across and install the Node.js for that matter. So for the Node.js, I already have a setup written with me. So first of all, just go to location, keep on pasting. So one more thing, like the instruction step which I have is for the Node version 17. I'll just make it modified for Node version 18. Okay, so uh, okay, let's see. We have the version and everything with us. Looks totally fine. Okay, and then go across with the installation of it. Okay, you can see like Node version 18 is there, so I can simply go across and start the installation of the Node.js version 18. Okay, so if I do Node version. Okay, so I have the Node version 18, which is required for this application to work. Yeah, let's see about the npm as well. So npm, totally fine. Now, for a lot of npm to work, we need this build essentials as well. So otherwise, it sometimes fail with a lot of dependencies that it wants to install. Okay, okay, perfect. So I can just go back to my folder and I'll just go to the hello services and I can see the hello services. I'll just go across the npm install. Now you can see like npm install has basically created a node modules folder, and if you see, okay, so you can see like .env file is also basically there, right? So we'll do the same thing for the profile services as well. Okay, npm install. Okay, perfect. So all of these services are running across. Now if we just want to run we want to see like if no, if everything is fine, then if we run this across, it's running on the port number 3002. Okay, which is good. And if similarly, if I actually want to run it with the hello services, I can run with the hello services. We can see like if this is running on the port number 3001. So we know like the two services that we configured, it is perfectly working fine in the two different port numbers, right? Remember, we're not accessing these particular, we're not opening this port number to be used by the outer. So if you are running the services and if you're opening it with public IP with the port number 3001 or 3002, you won't be able to get it because those ports are closed from the security of the AWS. So that is something that we needed to configure if we actually want that. But that is not what we actually want at this point, right? So what we want is like, we would like to have a configuration with the Nginx so that it transfer the traffic to the port number 3001 and 3002. Right now, if you keep on just opening it, it will keep on, sending the traffic to the normal Nginx, which is already running across. Okay. Status. Let's see the status. Okay, so Nginx is already running at port. Okay, so Nginx is running. We have not configured, so we need to make sure that is port is always on the HTTP. Anyway, so we go to the Nginx configuration to make those changes. Okay, so we go, there's a website called, there's a sites available. So we go to the sites available folder, and this we are going to have create a copy of the default file, and this is something that you should do it in case if you mess up with the default file. You always have an option to you know fall back and configure the old one where things are working perfectly fine. So I have created like a copy of default and wrote it as like default old or default backup. Whatever works fine. Okay, so now at this point, I'll just go across and edit my default file. Okay, it has a tons of informations out there, right? It has servers, location, blah blah blah. Too much of the information is there. So my suggestion would be like, if you look into it, like, this is a server block. Okay, this is exactly, so all of these are comments, by the way, starting with the hash. So this is a server block which says that it is going to listen at port number 80 and the default server. So whatever like the default server configuration is set up, it's going to do that. So these are the part where we are going to change our default server to the website address that we want, and then we are going to specify. Okay, so this is like a normal configurations where it's pointing out that the if anyone opens this particular website, it should go and fetch the information from this particular address, from this particular location, right? So in our case, we need a reverse proxy, so that is not something we would like to do it. Okay, now if you want some other website to be handled, so you can also handle. So as I was mentioned, like two different subdomains, two different server blocks needed to be created. So I'll do it from the scratch. So it's better that we delete every single thing at this point. So I'll basically go across and delete everything, and I'm going to create a server block from my side, right? Okay, I keep on messing up my block. So I'll just first listen to port number 80. Okay, then I'm going to write the server name, server underscore name, and this is going to be API. Okay, so let's write it awesome, you know, MERN API dot in. Okay, so I already have a website, so we need to remember we need to configure this as well on our Nginx. Okay, okay, so I have specified my server name as this, and now we need to basically, point out the location. So this is like an Nginx reverse proxy configuration. So we know like our backend services are going to be running on, for example, the hello service. That's what we want, right? So hello service needs to be working across. Okay, and we need to do a reverse proxy configuration. So first of all, let me identify the proxy path and specify at which particular address this particular website is going to run. Okay, perfectly fine. Okay, then I'll specify proxy set underscore header. Okay, specify the host, dollar host, and then the same thing. Okay, so I need to specify well IP. So all of this configuration, I'm doing it for the reverse proxy, setting up a various values which is required for uh, you know the reverse proxy things to work. Okay, so this particular information will be same for even for you. Okay, you just have to copy paste things from here. Okay, I'll put them on my GitHub repository in the README file. Okay, so we have all these, configurations set. We are going to do exactly the same for my, the uh, profile as well. Location, profile. Okay, it's the same thing that we are going to specify here for the location as well. So I'm basically going to copy all of these information, copy it, okay, and paste it, right? The only thing that I'm going to do is I know that my profile is basically running on port number 3002, so I need to make sure that my profile is running on port number 3002. That's it. That's all we need to do with this configuration. Nothing very fancy about it. We just need to make sure that on my Cloudflare, I need to create a subdomain with this particular name and it should point out to this particular IP address. That's it. And every single thing will be handled automatically. So let's go ahead and configure my Cloudflare. So open my Cloudflare. Let me just log into my Cloudflare. Okay, so I have okay, so I am right now inside my Cloudflare. You can see this is what I was expecting. Awesome. Right, things to be there. My bad. I think I messed up. Did I mess up? Yeah, I did mess up actually, to be honest. Okay, we don't need this. Okay, host. Okay, just need to make sure that. Okay, so let's go. I'll paste things up, and it should be pointing out to this IP address. That's another thing that we need to make sure of it. I don't even need. I can just specify this. Just the name of the subdomain. That's totally fine with me, right? If you want to provide it with a proxy, you can do it. If you don't want, doesn't matter. Okay, so my awesome MERN API is perfectly fine. Okay, just go across, save the file. You know, I'm done. Okay, I just okay. We also need to reload. We need to run through my services as well. So I haven't executed my services as of now. So I'll just go to the backend folder. Okay, and we'll go to the hello service. And I know I need to execute this. I will execute this as a backend service. Okay, similarly, I'll just go to my other service called as a profile service and start executing them as well. Okay, which means at this point, if I just simply open my service, okay, at hello, okay, oh my bad. So I need to open this with the same domain name that we opened up slash prashant in slash hello. Okay, let me just make sure that it is have I reloaded my page? Have I loaded my Nginx service? So the thing is like, we also need to reload the Nginx for the Nginx configuration that we made. Okay, so that is something we have never done that. So obviously those things changes will not be reflect. So now if you see, it says the Nginx. So it's a good idea that you run this Nginx -t. The reason is like, it will basically give you a idea if you have made any changes or not. Okay. So for example, if you see the Nginx, it says failed because there might be some or the other mistake which I might have done into the default folder in the line number 13. So let's go back and visit this changes. So it's a good idea to know, like, how do we actually make those changes. So it says that I might have made some mistakes on this part, okay, which is line number 13. Not sure what that mistake is. We'll look into the entire thing one by one. So listen port, localhost 3001 proxy pass to port 2000. Oh, okay, my bad. See, this is what I did. So remember, like, copy pasting the stuff which happened. It's a good idea to, how do you debug this application? This is how you debug the application, just in case. So now if I do this test, so it says that it is still making, expecting something here. Okay, so probably I might have missed some or the other way. Okay, so you can see at this end there's a oh, too much now. Okay, perfect. So if I see that now this test is perfectly running fine, it's good. So we go across and we do, this time we'll be use systemctl to restart my service, reload Nginx. We have used my bad, systemctl. So there are two ways you can work around with the services. One is the service command and the other one is the systemctl command. Whatever works for you, you can simply go ahead and reload this. Okay, so I basically reload the my Nginx, and if everything worked fine, then I should be, getting my hello world, right? So you can see, like, awesome, one API, hello, hello world service is running. Similarly, if I go across with the profile, you will see the profile service will also be running across. Okay, so for profile services, there are, different routes already being configured, which is something we are supposed to be, you know, hitting through, right? For the profile service, you can see there's a health route is there, right? So we need to health. So now profile, we'll just hit the health route of the profile, and it should be perfectly fine. So this is how we basically, uh, created Nginx load balancing using the routes-based services to, forward those traffics. Now, if we do the same thing for the, front end as well. So front end is pretty much the same. Okay, we don't have to configure too much. We don't have to worry too much about it. So what we do is, like, for the front end is we do the same thing. It's just that we'll create another server block. Okay, so see, no matter how many website you want to add it, you can add it. It's just that you have to configure the server block at this point. Okay, that's the only requirement that you have. So I'll make it that it's also going to listen on port number 80. Okay, and the server name, let's say, fe dot fe. Okay, or let's say some MERN dot in. Okay, and this time we can also go across, we can simply copy paste this entire thing and simply go ahead, paste it, making sure, okay, I really want to paste it. Okay, it got pasted. Now this, I can run this as a reverse proxy, okay, because I'm just running my backend as uh, in a development, sorry, my front end will be running as a development mode. But if your front end is basically stored in the Nginx or something like that, you probably would like to, configure in that particular manner. Okay, so just be careful about, what your services are at this point. So if you actually look into the Nginx, okay, it says everything is fine. Thankfully, we are not making any mistake this time. But I also need to, run through my front end, okay, because I haven't configured my front end. Remember, this is for the development, so I'm not using any, I'm not, building it across and doing on all the optimization which is required if you do it in the production servers. So my front end is running now. Okay. One final thing that we need to work on is that I just need to create another one and specify the same IP address. That's it. Done. So if you have worked everything perfectly fine, you will notice that it should be working fine. Okay, you can see my front end is running on awesomelearn.prashante.in. My backend is running on awesomelearn API.prashante.in, and I'm just using one particular instance in making everything work. And that's the power of route-based routing. That's the power of Nginx. You can do crazy things around it. You can also create your own load balancer, like having a replica of two different, having a replica of a service, and then you can balance out the load as well. You don't need those expensive load balancer. Obviously, when you go to the production, this is not, I would recommend it, but for development servers, okay, we just need have a small resources, want to complete it. This is the solution for you. Thank you. Have a nice day.